Have you ever felt like the world is changing faster than you can keep up? Like the systems we've always known are shifting under our feet? Well, you're not alone. There's a growing conversation happening, a quiet hum that's getting louder, about the idea of global governance. Some call it a one-world government, and today we're going to dive into what that means, looking at the facts and exploring the different perspectives without jumping to conclusions. So what are we talking about when we say global governance? It's not necessarily some shadowy group in a secret room. A lot of this is happening right out in the open. Think about big international organizations like the United Nations. The UN was founded after World War II with a noble goal: to prevent another global conflict and foster cooperation between nations. It deals with everything from peacekeeping missions and humanitarian aid to setting international standards on human rights and environmental protection. The idea is that some problems are just too big for any single country to solve alone. Pandemics, for instance, or a global financial crisis, or the big one everyone's talking about, climate change. These are global challenges that don't respect national borders. So, organizations like the UN argue that we need global solutions, which means countries working together in a coordinated way. This brings us to the core of the debate. On one hand, you have proponents who say that stronger global institutions are essential for our survival and prosperity. They argue that in an interconnected world, what happens in one country can have a ripple effect across the globe. By pooling resources, sharing knowledge, and agreeing on common rules, we can tackle these huge issues more effectively. It's about cooperation, not control. They believe that by working together, we can create a more stable, peaceful, and sustainable world for everyone. Then, there's the other side of the coin. Critics of this trend are concerned about what it means for national sovereignty. Sovereignty is the idea that a nation has the right to govern itself, to make its own laws and decisions without outside interference. It's a cornerstone of the modern world order. The worry is that as international bodies gain more power and influence, individual nations might lose some of their ability to decide what's best for their own citizens. Let's look at a concrete example. The Paris Agreement on Climate Change. It's a landmark international treaty where nearly every country in the world agreed to work towards limiting global warming. Supporters hail it as a triumph of global cooperation, a necessary step to protect our planet. However, critics point out that fulfilling the commitments of the agreement often requires countries to change their domestic policies, their energy systems, and their economies. This raises the question, where do you draw the line? At what point does international cooperation start to feel like international direction? Now let's talk about another major player in this conversation, the World Economic Forum, or WEF. You've probably heard of their annual meeting in Davos, where leaders from business, government, and civil society gather to discuss the world's most pressing issues. The WEF is a huge advocate for what they call public-private cooperation. This means businesses and governments working together to solve global problems. A few years ago, the WEF introduced a concept that got a lot of attention: the Great Reset. This was proposed in the wake of the global pandemic as an opportunity to reset and rebuild our economies and societies in a way that is more sustainable and equitable. The idea is to use this moment of crisis to address long-standing problems like inequality and environmental degradation. On the surface, this sounds pretty good, right? Who wouldn't want a fairer, greener world? Proponents argue that the Great Reset is simply a call to build back better, to use this unique historical moment to create a more resilient global system. They see it as a forward-thinking plan to prepare us for the challenges of the 21st century. However, the Great Reset proposal has also generated significant skepticism and concern. Critics worry that it could lead to a system where a small group of global elites, the heads of major corporations and international organizations, have an outsized influence on how the world is run. They're concerned that this push for a reset could be used to implement sweeping changes that might not have broad democratic support. The fear is that it could further erode the power of elected national governments and place more decision-making authority in the hands of unelected international bodies and corporations. It's this concern about a loss of democratic accountability that fuels much of the resistance to these globalist ideas. And this brings us back to the central theme: climate change. More than any other issue, climate change is often presented as the ultimate justification for stronger global governance. The logic is compelling. The climate is a global system. Carbon emissions from one country affect the entire planet. Therefore, only a globally coordinated response can be effective. Leaders and activists argue that we are in a race against time, and that the slow, messy process of individual national politics is not up to the task. They advocate for international agreements with real teeth, for global carbon taxes, and for internationally enforced standards on emissions. From this perspective, the threat is so existential that surrendering some national sovereignty is a small price to pay to save the planet for future generations. It's seen as a matter of collective survival. But this line of reasoning makes others very nervous. They ask, who gets to decide what the rules are? Who will enforce them? What happens if a country disagrees with the global consensus? Will they be punished or coerced into complying? These are not simple questions. The concern is that climate change could become the rationale for creating powerful global authorities that could override national laws and policies, all in the name of a greater good. This could lead to a situation where citizens of a country have little say in major decisions that affect their lives, their jobs, and their economies. So, as you can see, this is a complex issue with valid arguments on all sides. It's not a simple story of good versus evil. It's a fundamental debate about how we should organize ourselves as a global community in the 21st century. On one side, you have the vision of a connected, cooperative world, where nations work together through strong international institutions to solve problems that are too big for any one of them to handle alone. It's a vision of unity, collaboration, and shared responsibility for our collective future. On the other side, you have a deep-seated concern for national sovereignty, democracy, and self-determination. It's a vision that prioritizes the right of a people to govern themselves and to make their own choices according to their own values and interests, without being dictated to by outside forces. The reality is that we are already living in a world of deep global integration. Our economies, our information systems, and our cultures are more interconnected than ever before. The question isn't whether we will interact globally, but how we will govern those interactions. Will we move towards a more centralized system of global governance, or will we find a way to cooperate effectively while preserving the sovereignty and independence of nation-states? This is a conversation that's happening right now, in the halls of the UN, at forums like the WEF, and in our own national governments. And it's a conversation that affects every single one of us. It is about the kind of world we want to live in and the kind of future we want to build. It's crucial that we all stay informed, that we listen to all sides of the debate, and that we think critically about the information we receive. Don't just take one person's word for it, not mine, not anyone's. Do your own research. Read the reports from the UN and the WEF for yourself. Read the critiques. Understand the different viewpoints. Because ultimately, the future of our world isn't just in the hands of global leaders. It's in our hands too. It's our engagement, our understanding, and our voices that will shape the path we take. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. It's a heavy topic, but an incredibly important one. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that goes beyond the headlines. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the balance between global cooperation and national sovereignty? Let's keep this important conversation going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.